Hi everyone in cloud computing, and welcome to episode 14 of the Cloud Computing Training Show with Brad Nelson and internationally recognised and world's #1 cloud industry expert and thought leader, David Linthicum. This show is sponsored by Nelson Hilliard, cloud computing recruitment specialists, placing great people in cloud, IoT, fintech and AI. This week we are excited to have Bernard Golden as our special guest. Bernard is the Vice President of Cloud Strategy at Capital One. Bernard is a long-time tech innovator and visionary. Wired.com named him one of the most top influential people in cloud computing. He's the author and co-author of 5 books, including the best-selling cloud computing book ever, Amazon Web Services for Dummies. Hi Dave and Bernard, a warm welcome to both of you. It's exciting to have 2 tech innovators and visionaries on the training show this week.
Yeah, and it's really great to have Bernard here. He's been a frequent guest on my podcast, and he's probably always the top 5 thought leaders in the cloud computing space, and just provides consistent, great ideas. And has written for CIO magazine. He's spoken at a lot of conferences that I've been at. I'm just a big fan of Bernard's, and it's really great to have him on the show.
Well, thank you for those very kind words, and thank you very much for inviting me. I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent. Thanks very much, guys. In this week's show, we will be talking about when considering free cloud computing training, do you get what you pay for? Over to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a core question. This was an article that was written by a guy. I love reading his stuff because he basically is the guy who critiques the analysts. This is Louis Colombo of Forbes, and we'll post the article in the show notes. But he stated, there's lots of places you can go to get free cloud computing training, and ultimately, I think it's important that it's out there, and I think people, want to get trained up in cloud computing just because of the opportunities it provides. But the core question is asked, with everybody out there, Cloud Academy and Linda, who I'm an author for, just full disclosure. All these other folks that are, basically putting this out for a fee or a modest fee, things like that. What's the difference between the two? And I would be interested in Bernard's take on this, because I just thought it was an interesting question I'd like to explore.
Yeah, well, I have a dog in the hunt too. I've recently partnered with Udemy and have done a course for them on the AWS Solutions Architect Associate certification. So what I think you're pointing to, what we're experiencing, what Lewis was talking about, is a real sea change in the way people learn. It used to be, to get trained, it would be, I'll sign up for a course, I have to go somewhere, it's going to be 8 to 5, I'm going to be out of work for 3 days, 5 days, whatever it might be. And a lot of these courses were like $4,000 or $5,000 US. That is very hard to sustain. It's really inconvenient for people who want to learn. And there's a huge demand for education around these new technologies. The demand for people who know how to work with these big cloud provider technologies is just skyrocketing. And people need to get trained up on it. Organizations need to have their staffs trained up on it. And you just can't scale that old model. And so these new models come forward, and they tend to be much more cost effective, just like everything that gets digitized and delivered over the internet tends to scale better and tends to be less costly. And so I think what we're talking about reflects that. I think the training that's available, certainly for providers, is very good. It tends to be more point focused. I want to learn how to use this particular service. They'll have a great tutorial on it. Not so great about, I need to get up to speed generally on these technologies. I don't think they really see that as what they're going to deliver. But there are great resources for that are available.
So I think one of the differences in the free courses that providers offer, and those are actually pretty good. I've gone through a few of those myself and recommended them. They have a tendency to be very tactically focused, and of course they're going to promote their own stuff, and so you're not going to get, you should use Google here and Microsoft here and Amazon here. Whenever you're taking a course from a particular provider, they're going to talk about their technology, how their technology works, and it has a tendency to be a little superlatives as well. Even though I think Amazon stuff is pretty even-handed in terms of describing their technology. So when people are taking courses from authors like you and I, Bernard, so they kind of get the candid opinions I think people are looking for. I get feedback from my courses. My courses aren't free, but ultimately they appreciate the fact that I would say use AWS here and Google here, and this would work out well. You can mix and match them. There's multi-cloud opportunities and things you can move into. This is kind of security stuff, by the way. This doesn't work as well as this, and they get kind of the inside baseball kind of thing. So if we're talking about free courses from the providers, they just have a tendency to be too provider focused, and so we kind of need, if we're going to take free courses, it should be from course providers that are going to provide kind of a middle of the road view in terms of how cloud computing works and how everything needs to be put together. And I'll say a point of view, an opinion as to what these are. Even if it's wrong, I think people just kind of want an opinion. I mean, they come hear us speak because you have a certain opinion. You're going to say what's on your mind, and I'll do the same thing. They don't want to hear just about a particular single point of technology.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, obviously, any company, if it provides training around its products, is going to focus on its products, and is probably going to be, talking them up. I don't think there's any question about that or any reason. I mean, it would be natural. So, yeah, I think you're right about that. And people want to go and find, they really want to get the skinny on a particular, not just the technology, how to use it, but how they should think about that technology and how they should think about evaluating that technology of all the options they might have in terms of doing something. So, yeah, I think it's a fair statement that, yeah, they want somebody who's going to be even-handed, who's going to sort of say this is great, this you might have some challenges with. Yeah, I think that's a good point.
So should this be kind of a .org thing that the training is really kind of all the big service providers out there contribute to some sort of a open training fund, where there is a place where you and I and hundreds of other people can go who are going to provide a specialization in technology like AWS and Google, things like that, but also classes in architecture, classes in building multi-cloud, classes in security, multi-factor authentication, classes in encryption. I mean, you get the geeky stuff pretty quick, but they're providing free training, but they're also providing training that's technology agnostic, even though the technology providers are paying for the .org and the instructors and to get the content there and administrator and things like that. It seems to me that if you're going to do something that's free, that's probably something that should exist. Or am I crazy in thinking that the providers would ever fund something that wouldn't be directly to their message?
Well, I'll give you credit for your idealism. That's for sure. Could it happen? I guess it could. I would suspect, though, if there is going to be some kind of a neutral .org type situation or arrangement, it's probably not going to emanate from the providers. It's probably going to emanate from some other players in the industry. And, you might think it could be out of maybe some large users would band together, or maybe a governmental entity would say, we're going to form the foundation of this and then invite other people to participate. That is certainly plausible. That might be the case.
Yeah, I think maybe an open group. Of course, I don't know that it would be actually hip to that or not, but some kind of consortium or group that's already in place. For example, I actually think the Cloud Security Alliance has certain things that they have on training on their point of view, things like that. So it's interesting, how much. I mean, we just kind of took the conversation, the fact that I think things have moved from classroom training. And by the way, I'm the worst classroom trainee in the world. I just hate learning that way, just because I think it's kind of wasting my time. And I like to be able to stop things and go do something else and come back to it and kind of learn at my own pace. but ultimately now we're in the video world, but those typically are going to be paid for courses, and you and I are doing aspects of that, and I think there should be some paid for courses out there, because I think the content has value and people are going to leverage the content. But it goes to the fact that a certain amount of the population out there, doesn't have the money to pay for the courses, and there should be kind of a pathway for them to learn, very similar things, if not the same thing, and do so for no money, without the superlative stuff where they're just, taking the AWS stuff or another cloud provider stuff, and that's really kind of all they know. And so I think it's kind of an open thing out there. And I think to the point you just made makes sense. I think government should fund this. In other words, governments fund schools, and governments fund content. I wouldn't say that the government actually produced the content, but I'd say they, give the money to a consortium of folks that are independent in nature. They're going to basically put these things together and put together kind of a career progression course. So people who are interested in doing this and want to further their career are going to be able to get the cloud computing training that they need, and they'll have guidance in terms of ways in which they can progress through this, even give them points and certificates of completion, things like that. So they get to a point where they're ready to join a company, and the company can pay for their AWS certifications and things like that, which actually cost money, but they're going to have kind of a path where they don't have to spend a lot of money or invest a lot of money. They probably don't have the money to spend, until they get the gig, to get them where they need. And it's kind of, and this could be an international consortium too, different languages and, things like that. And, we could translate one to Australian for you, Brad. And ultimately, provide the capabilities to, kind of take everything to the next level. So Brad, you're dealing with people like this all the time who are, up and coming to the cloud computing world. Do you think this would be an assistance to them, or they wouldn't trust free training?
There's so many great points that have been mentioned between the two of you. I really just don't know where to start. I think free training has its place, but I think paid for training has the value which deserves the commitment and the outcome of paying for something. You pay for what you get, according to most things that have a quality aspect to them. Look, some of the free training is very good. I had a conversation with someone the other day. They were interested in shiny objects. I spoke to them about that, further to one of our shows that they'd seen about blockchain, etc., and cybersecurity and cryptocurrency. Those three favourite ones at the moment. And I said, look, you've got to. It's all about what is it you want to do. What are you trying to get out of your training? Start off going down the free route and looking about what is it that interests you, because when you get to someone like the recruitment stage and you're coming to see someone like myself, you've got to demonstrate not only the skill sets and the mindsets of being, or the experience certainly of what you've done or what you can do, but equally the passion behind doing it. I'm not interested in people that just serve me a CV with qualifications. I've done this and I'm looking to do that. I need to find there's got to be an energy there. This is speaking personally from my point of view. But essentially that's got to, if you just re-engineer that back to the training, and someone's come to me saying, look, I want to get into cloud, what do I do? Where do I get my training? Then I would always say, and we've spoken about this before, David, about Google and YouTube being a great source of free, insightful training into where you want to, or what you would like to pursue. But that's really based on your interests and your current skill set. So finding out and doing the due diligence on your future career, and where you see yourself and why you see yourself there, I think are fundamentals for people when we're having that discussion about cloud training and career moving forward. And equally, as we spoke about again a couple of weeks ago, second guessing the industry and where you see yourself within that industry and who are the main players there and where their technology is going as well. So I think there's a number of different levels, and Bernard and yourself have highlighted some fantastic points about a consortium of training, government funding and that sort of thing. I've also thought about subscription training where you're charged per hour of being on a website and using certain documents, etc. That's another thing that I've thought about. Haven't quite got around to working out how to facilitate that just yet. But essentially, yes, I mean, if there were people that are on some form of they're on a government subsidy for living, there could be a great opportunity to bring people into a government subsidised training platform where they can learn a new skill, retrain, whether they've been made redundant or they're a retiree coming out of retirement and they want to reskill. I think it's a great opportunity where they can, train at home, demonstrate they've done a lot of training, then go to an employer and say, look, I've done this amount of training, this is my online profile with regards to training, I just need you to subsidise the exam. And if I meet the criteria on the exam that's suitable, then potentially I'm eligible to work for that organisation. I think that would be lovely, and I think that would be a really, it would put a lot more people into work, and I think for the amount of money potentially investing into a government-sponsored platform, the return on investment back into the economy would be fantastic for that initial thing. So free cloud training on YouTube initially, but understanding why they're doing it, what they want, what the outcomes are that they want to achieve, and then looking at adding the value by investing in themselves.
Yeah, I didn't see that as an angle. I mean, the more they're trained, the more money they make, and the more independent they are. So the less they're going to take from the system, the taxpayers, and things like that. So kind of final question, Bernard, to you. What would advice you'd give to somebody in an elevator ride if they say, I'm a student, I just got out with a philosophy degree, I can't find a job, have no money, and I want to get into cloud computing? What kind of training could I find out there? What advice would you give them?
This is unbelievable because I just literally had a guy on LinkedIn yesterday contact me and say, hey, I've signed up for your course. Is it possible for me to get a job doing cloud computing stuff with a certification but a non-engineering degree? And I got to say, I have a soft spot in my heart for people like that because my undergraduate degree is political philosophy. So I come out of exactly that kind of thing. And what I said to him was, yeah, if you've got a passion around this, there are such great resources. I mean, something we didn't really touch on, but I think is really important these days is he was somebody that I discerned was from a country perhaps like India, a developing nation. The dramatic change in the cost equation for training that are available today is just an incredible opportunity for folks like him. And what I said to him was, yeah, you're not going to be able to fall into the typical recruitment approach where people just go, I'm looking for somebody with this background, with this degree, from these institutions and all that. But you can definitely, if you've got a passion around this, you will be able to find your niche. You may have to start off at a lower level job. You may have to be thinking about, I suggested he had to really think about career development because you don't want to start off at a low level job and then be stuck there. So you have to be sort of saying, I'm going to develop and then I'm going to move and then I'm going to move up. You can build a career, no question about it, coming out of a background that isn't perhaps traditional. And these kinds of educational resources are a huge boon or benefit for that, an incredible enabler. And I definitely think that there's opportunities, no question about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's close the show out, Brad. A1 winner show.
It's been great. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Bernard. Wonderful to have you on the show as our special guest this week.
Well, thank you again so much for inviting me. I've really enjoyed it. It's been a great exchange of ideas and really had a great time.
That's fantastic. Well, thanks again, guys. It really has been a privilege having you both on the show, and we've bounced some fantastic ideas around on all three shows this week, which has been awesome. So, look, thanks for watching, everyone. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the show so you don't miss out on future shows and future special guests. You can get Bernard on Twitter, which is @BernardGolden, and also David Linthicum, which is @DavidLinthicum, and myself @Nelson_Hilliard. So, thanks again for watching, and stay tuned for next week's shows.